Life is a continuous cycle of endings and new beginnings. When different moments in our lives seemingly appear to end, a brand new chapter immediately begins. And it is this never ending cycle that is responsible for all of our major key experiences, our past, present, and future, that define our lives. Let's take a moment and talk about it. Hello, and welcome back to Moment of Zen, a podcast about everything and nothing. I'm your host, as always, Johnson Zen. And first of all, I just want to say that it feels so good to be back. Season 2 starting today. And before we get into the main topic for this week, I have a lot of house cleaning that I want to get through before. So if you're not interested, just skip ahead like 3 minutes to get to the main topic for today's episode. If you're a new listener or if you're a returning listener and want to listen to season 1, you can listen to it on YouTube. Links can be found in the description. Unfortunately, the podcasting hosting site I use removes my episodes after about 90 days after I upload them. So after 90 days, they'll be gone from iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. Really sorry about that. I'll try in the future to maybe get everything back up on these platforms, but for now, you'll have about 90 days to listen to an episode from when they're uploaded. Otherwise, you have to listen to them on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, for those of you who don't know, during my time off, I started a YouTube series called Story of Food, where I talk about the origins of your different favorite foods in a visual and comedic fashion. I had a lot of fun making those videos, so please check them out if you get the chance. And the last thing I want to talk to you about before I begin is basically what my plans are for this season and beyond. I originally started this podcast as a way to kind of express myself and my interests through storytelling and talking about interesting subjects not everyone may be familiar with. I kind of, towards the end of last season, I drifted a little bit away from that goal, so this season I want to make every effort to kind of go back to why I started this podcast. And again, I just want to thank everyone for your support. Season 2 is going to be much better, a lot more fun, and with a few new surprises. So I hope you're looking forward to it because I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you all enjoy. Enough rambling, let's get started. So like I said, season 2 is going to be a little bit different from last season. It will be a bit more personal, but at the same time, I think it'll be relatable to you as well. Like the title of this episode suggests, this episode is about new beginnings. What do I mean by this? So in our lifetime, we're always constantly experiencing these things that I like to call new beginnings. Whether they come in the form of something major like starting a new job or something small like starting a new show on Netflix, it is these new beginnings that shape us and define us as who we are as individuals. So as a young adult in my mid-20s, I've had many new beginnings that ranged from something small and insignificant to something life-changing. And today, I want to talk to you about 3 new beginnings that have or will have a major impact on your life, whether it happened a couple years ago or maybe it'll happen a few years in the future. I think these 3 new beginnings are what really kind of define who we become as people. So the first of these new beginnings is school. For many of us, school was the first place we met other people outside of our immediate families. It was the first time for me, at least, that the person who had authority over me was not one of my parents, but instead a complete stranger. Just think back to that day, your very first day in school, not the first day of school, but your very first day of school, whether it was in kindergarten like me or preschool. Think about what it felt like for your parents to bring you to a completely unfamiliar room full of other kids and their parents, and then for them to say goodbye to you as they leave you there. What was going through your head? What were you feeling at that time? I remember my first day of school pretty clearly. It was a fairly cloudy, overcast September day in 1998. I don't remember which day of the week it was exactly, but I do remember waking up excited for my first day of school. My brother, who was 2 years older than me, he was about to start second grade, and I was on my way to kindergarten. At that time, I kind of had an idea what school was, but I had no idea what to expect when I got there. I remember arriving at school with my brother and my parents, and my mom went with my brother to help him find his classroom. And back then, I don't know if they still do it now, but on the first day of school, there would be this bulletin board out in the playground or next to the front office. And each board would be separated by the grade level. So the first graders had their board, the second graders had theirs, and so on and so forth. And posted on these boards would be, the class list with the names of the students listed in alphabetical order by last name. And that's how you found out which homeroom teacher and which classroom you were assigned to. For my brother and I, since our last names starts with a Z, we were always at the bottom of the list, so it was really easy to find our names. So my mom went with my brother to the bulletin boards to find his name and to find his classroom, while my dad took me to the kindergarten classroom. So kindergarten, at least at my elementary school and most of the elementary schools I know in the US, were kind of sectioned off from the rest of the school. There would be kind of a small playground and a classroom dedicated specifically for those in kindergarten. So at my school, we had two kindergarten teachers, Miss Wei and my kindergarten teacher, Miss Richards. Anyways, I remember going into the classroom and walking across the room to go through the other door that kind of leads outside into the sectioned off kindergarten playground. And that was where all the students and parents were gathering to find out who their teachers were going to be. And for me, it was my first experience seeing all of these new people around my age. And I was an extremely shy and introverted kid back then. I mean, I still kind of am now, but I just remember there's just this cacophony of noise that I was just not used to at that moment. You had parents talking with other parents, parents talking with their kids, and other kids talking and making friends with one another. I went to a pretty diverse school, I would say. So you had people speaking in English, Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Vietnamese, so on and so forth. It was the first day of school, so everything was just so chaotic and different from what my home life was. And everything at that moment to me was just really overwhelming. And my dad is one of those really kind of stoic and traditional kind of men that doesn't really get too emotional or try to comfort you in any way. So the entire time we were standing there and waiting for the bell to ring, he didn't really say anything to me. And me, as a 4-year-old, I was kind of looking at the other parents being really supportive and encouraging their children, and that really kind of drove up my anxiety about the whole thing. And the next thing I knew, the bell rings and the teachers come out to greet everyone and take roll call. Being as my last name is Zhen, of course, when doing roll call, I'm pretty much last. I am last. So as the names were getting called out one by one, the sort of chaos in the playground slowly became much more orderly as the students who got their names called they began lining up single file by alphabetical order, and they were given these name tag stickers to stick onto their shirts. And once a name was called, I'd see like parents, wishing their kids good luck, and then walking back to the classroom in order to kind of leave the area. I just remember this kind of cold sweat coming over me when Miss Richards made it to the V's, and there was probably another 3 to 5 more students left to call. And if any of you ever played sports on the playground, it's kind of like that feeling when there are like two kids picking teams and you're like one of the last two to be picked. And while all this was kind of happening, I turned to my dad to kind of get some, maybe get some moral and emotional support. And I remember seeing him looking at his watch and pretty much being kind of indifferent to the entire situation I was in. I was just standing there with so much anxiety and confusion, and he was just there looking at his watch, and I was like, like, can't you see that I need some emotional support right now? But looking back at that moment, this is so like him, because he was probably thinking whether he'd be late for work, all while his son was kind of having a nervous breakdown, like right next to him. And I mean, to his credit, he didn't know that I was freaking out on the inside. Yeah, so then my name is called, and I don't know how, but I made my way to the back of the line, and I turned to my dad, and he kind of looks at me, and he didn't really know what to say. Like, I knew he wanted to say something to me, but he didn't know what to say because he's just not really good at expressing himself. So we kind of looked at each other. It's that kind of awkward stare you give someone when like you want to kind of say something first, but then you're waiting for the other person to say something. So after about like a few seconds, he goes, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna go now." And then that was it. And then I saw him walking through the door that we had just both came in through like 10 minutes earlier. And I get my name tag sticker thing and I stick that onto my shirt. And then Miss Richards, she kind of starts this icebreaker activity and has us going around introducing ourselves to the other kids. And I remember looking at my dad as he was walking to the parking lot, and I remember I saw him making his way to his car, and at that moment, I honestly thought that my parents just left me here in this strange place and that they didn't want me anymore. I have no idea why I thought that, because I've seen my brother go to school for 2 whole years before I even started school, but for some reason I thought they brought me to school to abandon me. I really don't know why. It just sounds so ridiculous now as an adult, but that's how I genuinely felt at that moment. I don't remember anything much about the icebreaker because I was probably such an emotional mess at that point. And eventually Miss Richards brought us inside to the classroom, and I don't remember when, but almost immediately after I went inside, I just began crying my eyes out. And everything that day was just a complete blur to me. And all I remember was I pretty much cried the entire day at school. In kindergarten, we got out of school around noon, and it was my mom who came to pick me up later that afternoon. And when she came to pick me up, she was like so surprised that I cried at school the entire day. And I think Miss Richards had a translator to help. I don't remember. And I'm pretty sure you're definitely not listening to this podcast. I just want to say, if you're listening, Miss Richards, I'm so sorry. I have no idea how you manage an entire day of teaching the rest of the kids while having to deal with, an annoying crying kid like myself at that day. And the very first day, mind you. But she really was one of the best and nicest teachers I've ever had. So shout out to her for being such a patient and awesome teacher. But yeah, that was my very first day of school ever. And that day was really where it all started for me. I'm still the same kind of introverted, anxious, and emotional mess that I was that morning 20 years ago. So go figure. And to everyone that's starting school soon or have just started the new school year, what I want to say to you is that this is a new beginning for you. A new semester is a clean slate. It's a new opportunity. Whether you enjoy going to school or not, it's the experiences that matter. And statistically, you'll probably forget about 70% or more of what you learned in school, but it'll be these experiences that carry on with you as you finish school and come into the real world. And I'm not saying, oh, if I'm just going to forget everything, why even bother trying in school? That's not what I'm saying at all. What I mean by this is that not everyone needs to know and remember, differential calculus or, the electron configuration of xenon. And again, this is my own opinion, so feel free to agree or disagree with me. But I really want to emphasize the importance of the experiences you have while you're in school. I do think getting good grades is important. I just don't think that it's the only thing you should be caring about. School is an institution of learning, and not just learning in terms of books and exams. And what I mean by learning is that you probably learned how to socialize with others at school, or maybe you learned how to play a sport or instrument at school, or figured out that you had a passion for art, or you learned that teachers are just normal people like you and me. And maybe it's at school where you found your first love or you got your first heartbreak. And maybe at school you find out who you truly are and embraced it. The point I'm trying to make here is that for the majority of our adolescence and young adult lives, school provided us with almost endless opportunities to grow and become the people who we are today. So take advantage of those opportunities and don't be afraid to try something new this year. That is your homework for this year if you're in school. Do something that you would have never have even thought of doing, and just try something. The second new beginning I want to talk about is personal relationships. I don't necessarily mean romantic relationships. I mean, we have all kinds of relationships with people. We have relationships with friends, family, colleagues, teachers, and so on and so forth. And there are about 7.5 billion people living here on Earth. So you're probably not going to be running out of new people to meet anytime soon. Think about a really important person to you that's not part of your family. It could be your best friend, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, your partner, spouse, teacher, advisor, or even a coworker. Now, think about this person. And now think about the time before you met that person, when that person was a complete stranger to you, or when you had no idea that he or she even existed. Depending on which person you're thinking about, it might be inconceivable to you that there used to be a time when this person you're thinking about right now didn't even exist in your life. Now, think about the first time you met this person. What can you remember about this person? What do you think of this person? Did you know at that moment that this stranger would become such an important part of your life now? I think most people don't really approach strangers like this. I mean, for the most part, people don't talk to a stranger and expect that that person becomes their next best friend or romantic interest or anything like that. I mean, this stranger could turn out to be the love of your life or even become your mortal enemy. But the only way to really find out is when the both of you stop becoming strangers to one another. And this is what I would consider a new beginning. And kind of on the flip side, think about a close friend you used to have, but maybe you don't talk to much anymore. Or maybe an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend. At one point or another, they used to be a really important part of your life. But for whatever reason, one of you or both of you decided that maybe the other person isn't as important to your life as you once thought. And whether it's gradual or abrupt, this person eventually disappears from your life. And that moment, to me, is a new beginning. it's the beginning of your life after you and this person have become essentially strangers once again. I've made a lot of friends and I've lost a lot of really good friends throughout my life. My closest friends from elementary school, they're different from the friends I had in high school. And the friends that I had in high school are completely different from the friends that I had in college. And all along the way, up until today, the people I consider most important to my life, a lot of them have come and gone, and a few of them have stayed, but each and every single one of the relationships, whether I've maintained them or if they're a relic of the past, they've become a part of me now. And that's something that'll never change. Even if everyone I knew today becomes a stranger to me 20 years from now. And the last new beginning I want to talk about today is more literal in its meaning, and it is physically moving from one place to another. At least here in the US, I would say that almost everyone has or will live in a place that is different from where they grew up. So that may mean moving to a different part of town or to another state or even another country. And to me, moving is a sort of this literal progression in your life, and it physically represents a new beginning. Whether you're moving out for college for the first time, or you're starting a new job, or because of economic reasons, or whatever reason you're moving, at the new place you're moving to, it just feels like a fresh start. So moving is a process. You don't just pack up your things and just find a new place and just go there. There's a process to it. And the first part of moving, for me at least, is the most exciting and stressful part of moving. And that is finding a new place to live. I have no idea how people did it before the internet, but I remember spending countless hours looking at housing ads on Craigslist or apartments.com and joining Facebook housing groups to find apartments that were within my budget and that were in a convenient location. You look at a dozen pictures that they have online and you kind of think to yourself, oh, that looks nice. And in the back of your mind, you know that those pictures aren't really what they look like in real life. So what you do is you come up with a list of potential places that pass what I call the online eye test. And then you start making phone calls or emails to the leasing office to set up an appointment to see the place. You make the call and it's like, oh, okay, this weekend at 10 o'clock, I'll be there. And then you show up at 10 o'clock and it's nothing like what the pictures were showing you online. But you're here anyway, so you might as well check it out. And something just didn't feel right about this place that you looked at today. So you're back to square one. Back to Craigslist, back to Facebook, and you start your search all over again. And this process can take, if you're lucky, just a weekend, or if you're unlucky like myself, several months. But eventually you find the one. It may not be perfect, but it's good enough for you. So you call the leasing office and you tell them you're interested in signing a lease. And now the first step of your move is complete. The last few weeks or days leading up to your move-in date is bittersweet, to say the least. You're excited about the opportunities the move will have, but a part of you will miss the life you're about to leave behind. And of course, the most dreadful part about moving is packing up your things. Ideally, you tell yourself that you'll slowly move your things into your new place piece by piece so you don't have to do everything all at once. But if you're like me, you'll wait until the very last day to pack up all your things and cram them into your car or trailer or whatever the morning of your move. Packing up your things evokes this kind of weird feeling for me. When you're packing, you never really realize how much stuff you've actually have until that moment when you're packing everything up. Because what you don't realize is throughout the time that you're living there, you've been slowly accumulating things. So now you don't have room to bring everything to your new place. So now it's time to go through your things and decide what you want to keep and what you want to bring to your new life. You start going through your things and decide what they mean to you. Is it worth keeping that old exam or paper you did for that class you really enjoyed? Is it worth holding on to that old ticket stub to the concert that you went to and where you met your ex? What do I want to bring with me to my new beginning? And what do I want to give up and leave behind as part of the past that led me here? Regardless of what you decide, you eventually pack up all your things and somehow, with your amazing Tetris skills, you manage to fit all your things into the car. And before turning in your keys, you take one last good look around your empty room, which moments ago, this was your room, your safe haven, and now it's unrecognizable to you. There's nothing left in that room that says you were here. That for the past year or however long, this room was where you felt most comfortable. And now it lays barren, waiting for the next tenants to come and make this room, your room, into their room. And at last, you turn on your keys and you head out to your new beginning. When you first unlock the door to your new place and you look around the empty room, the plain walls are absent of any sort of iconography that embodies and personifies the inhabitant of that room. Now, this new place becomes your new canvas, and you've become the artist that will paint a part of yourself into that room. This is your new beginning. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This has been your moment of Zen. And until next time, take care and stay fresh. See ya!